Dear scholars, today we will discuss American civil society and democracy assistance in the Arab Gulf states under the Bush administration from 2000 to 2008. In fact, this discussion is based on my PhD research, my PhD thesis, and in my thesis, I have discussed the role of the American government as well in chapter 4. In chapter 5, I have discussed the role of the American civil society. And in chapter 6, I have discussed the response of the governments in the Gulf states to the demands and calls for introducing democratic reforms, human rights reforms in various sectors. So I thought it is relevant to our course, which is political culture. When political cultures transition from one type to another type, when political cultures transition from authoritarianism to democracy. So, what type of topics, what type of activities, and what type of debates and discussions and issues are involved and relevant to it. So I hope it will go a long way in understanding the transitions and in understanding the various aspects and dimensions of the democratic process, particularly in transitionary democracies, in the transitionary systems. In fact, what happened, after 9/11, there was a big shift in American foreign policy vis-a-vis democracy in foreign lands, particularly in the Middle East. America formed a 9/11 commission, and this commission published a lengthy report after the investigations. And in this report, the 9/11 commission said the lack of democracy and violations of human rights in the Middle East, particularly in the Arab countries, are a source of extremism and terrorism in the world, which are a threat to the American security. So, this way, American security on the one hand was linked to the democracy in the Middle East on the other hand. So, a link was established, and accordingly, the Bush government launched a freedom agenda for the Middle East. And the government functionaries, right from top to the bottom, particularly in the State Department and in many other departments, there was a huge emphasis on promotion of democracy and human rights in the Arab world. And a lot of governmental organizations were involved in it. Congress made legislations. The finance department provided finance for various projects. Similarly, USAID was involved, and many other governmental institutes worked on to implement the freedom agenda. So, in my thesis, I have focused only on the Gulf region because Middle East is a very vast region. I could not handle all the countries in one thesis, so I chose the Gulf region, which consists of six countries, excluding Yemen. So, GCC countries. My focus is on GCC countries: Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Kuwait, Bahrain, UAE, and Oman. These are six members of the Gulf Cooperation Council. So we can call them GCC states, GCC countries, or Arab Gulf states. So in this chapter, I have discussed the role of the American civil society in pushing the reform agenda and promoting the democratic values and norms in this region. So some preliminary comments are here in line. The Bush administration started giving more and more importance to promoting democracy in the Arab world. Because of this, the American private sector also became interested in supporting democracy in the region. American non governmental organizations worked along with US government organizations. This does not mean that American NGOs had never worked for democracy in the Arab world before 9/11. They hadn't been working before, but now the emphasis was more.
It was a proper campaign now.
Proper campaign. They were active earlier too, but after 2000, the number of activities increased a lot. The size and scale of their activities also became much bigger. The events of 9/11 shocked the Bush administration. Those events also shocked the American people. American civil society and businesses could not ignore the suffering caused by 9/11 events. A strong feeling of insecurity spread among Americans after the 9/11. This feeling made American NGOs and businesses more active. They realized they must do something. They wanted to contribute to America's long term security. They also wanted to contribute to world security in general. This need to do something required clear policy direction. The direction came from the US president. The president said that promoting democracy in the Middle East was essential. American civil society started using all kinds of resources to promote democracy in the Middle East. This included the Gulf countries as well. Many different American organizations, institutions, and companies took part in this campaign. They tried to introduce democratic values and norms in the region. They tried to introduce democratic institutions in the Gulf countries and in the Gulf societies. NGOs took the lead. Think tanks, advocacy groups, universities, and internet based groups and networks played a role. Businesses helped too. So, business companies, they were also involved. Media companies also participated in many activities. Many NGOs received financial or other kinds of support from the Bush administration. NGO activities often influence government policies. NGO activities can sometimes change government programs. NGOs have the power to push governments to keep their commitments. Neep is a scholar. He wrote about this in 2004. He said that many American political leaders support the idea of promoting democracy. He said that support for democracy helps create unity behind Bush's vision of America's role in the world. He also said that democracy provides a good opportunity to build national consensus on US foreign policy. Levitsky and Way, they are also scholars. They explained that many technocrats in Latin America studied in the United States. These technocrats kept strong ties with American academic and policy circles. These ties were supported by strong international civil society networks, and these networks were especially active in human rights and democracy promotion. The authors pointed out that after the Cold War, strong linkages between authoritarian states and the West affected democratization. So the people from Latin America who graduated from American education institutes, they kept in touch back in America with academia and with the democracy activists. So it helped this process of democratization in Latin America. So it means education also plays a role. According to them, democratization happened more often in countries, education on the one hand, and secondly, linkages, linkages to democratic societies. The more linkages there are, the more facilitation will there be for a democratic change. According to them, democratization happened more often in countries with strong ties to the West. The American private sector paid relatively less attention to strengthening civil society. However, some organizations still work in this area. Civil society itself is a sector, like education, like media, like women rights. Civil society itself is a sector, is identified as a separate sector when people discuss democratization and democracy, democratic reforms. So, civil society organizations include NGOs and yeah, yes, trade unions, associations. So, it is a broader category. NGOs is one category
Whole sector.
in the whole civil society sector. So promotion of civil society also plays a role. After all, when there are several organizations, they will talk about their rights. If there is a labor union, it will demand rights of the labor for the labor. If there is a women union, women association, it will assert the rights of women. So when there are 20s and hundreds of associations and unions in the state, they will are supposed to talk about their rights of the people. It means when they are talking about rights, they are asking for democratic rights, democratic reforms. So associations themselves, unions, and NGOs, they are a vehicle. They are a source of promotion of democratic reforms. So that is why the democracy promoters all over the world, they consider civil society as an important source of democratic change, and they help, they support launch and establishment of various associations and NGOs, and they support them financially, technically, morally. Some organizations still work in this area. For example, NDI, National Democratic Institute, I think, NDI, tried to build and strengthen civil society organizations in the Gulf. NDI, it is very famous for democracy promotion in the world. It is an American NGO. NGO, American NGO. The idea was to help civil society groups play a meaningful role in reforms. NDI also partnered with Kuwait Transparency Society, KTS, Kuwait Transparency Society. This partnership was part of its civil society programming. 5.1, the first section of this chapter, approaches and strategies. The focus was on education, culture, media, human rights, and women empowerment. So these are various sectors, subsectors. These areas were seen as important. It was believed that giving education to these areas, giving attention to these areas could help bring liberal and democratic changes. American educators were brought to the Gulf region. American doctors were also brought. They came to introduce democratic norms, to introduce democratic values.
Why, sir, sorry to stop here. Why it is necessary that the American democracy should prevail anywhere else or everywhere?
Some of the things are common in democracy. Some of the things may be different. For example, there may be some points which are conflictual to Islamic societies, okay, which are not acceptable to in Islamic societies. But some of the basic things are common in all democracies. For example, having parliaments, it has no problem in any society. Talking about human rights, it has no problems. Talking about education, there's no issue with it. So for these basic things, you can get support from anywhere. So the Americans were cautious when they were promoting democracy in the Arab world for Islam. They were careful, they were cautious that they should not offend the local culture. They were careful, they were conscious that if they provoke the people that the local cultures are threatened by the American culture, then there will be a backlash. So basically, the American government and the American NGOs, they were working on areas which were almost agreed upon. which were not conflictual, which were not problematic. So they were basically, as we will discuss in the coming discussion, they were focusing on media, education, women empowerment, civil society, parliaments, elections, like this. So these things are not very problematic for cultures, at least for people. So the Americans, doctors and experts were brought to the region.
53.
The goal was to help people learn these values directly. It was important to keep an eye on the situation in the region. So, monitoring was considered necessary. Monitoring helped in making future plans. A deep understanding of Gulf states and societies was required. So, the monitors were looking at whether the funds provided are being properly utilized and whether the direction of the programs implemented is proper and whether the governments are fulfilling their promises or not. So, all these things are being monitored. A deep understanding of Gulf states and societies was required. For this purpose, American think tanks produced research. American universities also produced research. Professional researchers produced many studies. A large amount of research work was created. The private sector did not follow the same approach as the Bush administration. So there was a little difference in the governmental approach towards democracy in the Arab world and the approach of the civil society, American civil society. Private organizations used different methods. Most of them promoted liberal democratic ideas. They tried to do this in a non-political way, so that people are not provoked.
Alarmed or
Yeah, alarmed. Yes. Because of this, said something specific. Critics argued that the NGOs focused on the symptoms of autocracy. They did not address autocracy, they focused on the symptoms of autocracy. Critics said they did not directly challenge autocracy itself, but there were exceptions. Human Rights Watch was one example. Human Rights Watch took political positions openly. NED tried to bring democracy activists together. It brought activists from democratic countries and autocratic countries. The goal was to build a community of Democrats, Network of Arab American Professionals, NAAP. A network of Arab American professionals worked on building networks. It created social networks among Arab Americans. It also created professional networks among Arab Americans. These networks connected people in the United States and other regions. NAAP also worked to promote the political interests of Arab Americans in the United States. The Gulf 2000 project created networks too. It formed a network of specialists. Specialists from every Gulf country were included. The Center for Democracy and Election Management, CDEM, also played a role. It is based at American University in Washington, D.C. Its aim was to strengthen democracy. It tried to improve electoral performance and to pave the way for democracy through better election practices. Many organizations formed partnerships. They collaborated to increase their impact. American NGOs worked with Gulf governments. American governments also worked with civil society in the Gulf. They worked with the private sector as well. The Center for International Private Enterprise, CIPE, partnered with various groups. It worked with think tanks, private sector organizations, and associations in the Gulf region. American civil society organizations had many goals. They wanted more participation in politics to become pluralistic. They wanted human rights conditions to improve. They wanted women to be empowered. They wanted stronger ties among politicians in the region. They also wanted reforms in education, and they also desired reforms in religious institutions. They also wanted to create awareness and to liberalize economic sector, social sector, and cultural sector. And they used many strategies and tools. They persuaded governments to introduce reforms. We are talking about the American civil society actors working in promoting democracy in the Gulf region. They organized debates, discussions, conferences, seminars, congresses, colloquia, roundtables, and dialogues.
Okay, what is this? Colloquium?
It's also a sort of debate, colloquium. It's a plural of colloquium. So one person may float some ideas or present a topic, then the others discuss it, comment on it. They may raise questions. So it is called a colloquium. They created education programs. They arranged training schools and workshops, generated information, provided new perspectives, launched blogs and websites, sent newsletters through emails, and they did advocacy. They arranged exchange trips, visits, tours, and business missions. They encouraged partnerships. Partnerships were encouraged in education, business, and entertainment. They created networks, supported democratic reforms, and gave policy recommendations. They encouraged co education, provided funds, and stimulated collaborations. They also used talk shows as a tool. Second section, organizations and programs. There were two main types of American non governmental organizations which worked for promotion of democratic reforms in the Gulf countries. One type focused on only one area. For example, they focused on research or they focused on human rights. Human Rights Watch is an example of this first type. It focused only on rights. The second type of organizations worked in many areas. National Democratic Institute (NDI) is an example of this second type. It works on in various sectors. So it is useful to give a short introduction of the leading American private organizations. These organizations work to support democracy in the Gulf region. According to Jeremy, NED, NDI, and IRI are leading US organizations supporting democracy in the Middle East. NED is National Endowment for Democracy. Yes. NDI is National Democratic Institute. IRI is International Republican Institute. But IRI was not very active in the GCC countries. National Endowment for Democracy, NED, is the American NGO most directly responsible for promoting democratization. It is a bipartisan organization. Both Democrats and Republicans work together to create it. So it is something special about it. NED is dedicated to helping democratic institutions grow in other countries. These institutions include political parties, trade unions, free markets, and business organizations. They also include civil society, independent media, and the rule of law. NED helps build strong connections between democratic movements abroad and the people of the United States. NED provides financial support to nonprofit organizations. Nonprofit organizations are NGOs, usually, or associations. Civil society organizations are usually, generally, not non-profit organizations. NDI, National Democratic Institute for International Affairs. It works to promote citizen participation, to strengthen political and civic organizations, to help build strong democratic institutions. NDI works with parliaments, political parties, governments, and civic groups. It receives its funding from NED. Gulf 2000 project. It is another project. It is based at the School of International and Public Affairs at Columbia University in New York. It focuses on creating a network of specialists for every Gulf country. Center for Democracy and Election Management, CDEM. It was established in 2002 after 9/11. It was created at the American University in Washington, D.C.
Is it possible that 9/11 happened in
2000,
sometime
2001,
2001 September.
September.
And in 2002, they have worked out all things and they decided to make an organization to start working on the democratization in the Gulf. Probably it was worked before the 9/11 or 9/11 was worked before it's happening.
In fact, these things are called conspiracy theories.
So,
And when we talk about scientific analysis and empirical analysis, we have to have some data which is confirmed,
substantial evidence or-
which is verifiable.
So,
Okay, which is verifiable. But unfortunately, a conspiracy theory cannot be verified.
yes.
There's no source. So when we study science, when we study philosophy, and after all, this is the Faculty of Social Sciences, and it is a program, Department of Political Science, and your program is PhD in Political Science. So we are doing science here. So in science, there's no room for conspiracy theories. So here we will discuss only the things which are verifiable, which are facts and figures, nothing else. So its goal is to support democracy. It tries to improve democracy by improving the performance of elections. CDEM organizes election management training institutes. It also arranges election observation missions. CDEM. Many organizations work together. They created partnerships and collaborations. This helped them increase the impact of their work. American NGOs worked with governments. They also work with civil society and the private sector in Gulf countries. The Center for International Private Enterprise, CIPE, made partnerships with think tanks. CIPE also worked with private sector organizations and associations in the Gulf. The third section, awareness campaign and research enterprise. In 2002, Cara Pico made an observation. She said that a lot of grant money became available. Money came from NED, the Ford Foundation, and other sources. This money opened new opportunities. Old and new research groups both got chances. These groups entered the democracy brokerage field. Most of these groups were non-profit organizations. Most of them worked with government grants. There were two major types of American private organizations. Both types worked on awareness, advocacy, and propaganda for democracy in the Gulf. The first type is these organizations focused on spreading ideas about democracy inside the United States. Some of the NGOs worked for democracy in the Middle East within the United States. They tried to convince the Americans to work in this direction, to promote democracy in the Middle East, in the Arab world. They tried to convince Americans about democracy in the Middle East. The second type of organizations worked at the international level, including the Middle East, including the Gulf countries. They spread democracy related ideas in the Gulf region. They also worked in the Middle East and at international forums. Some organizations that belonged to the first category were Middle East Policy Council, National Council on US Arab Relations. So these organizations were working in the United States. And among them was Americans for Middle East Understanding, AMEU. AMEU tried to create a deeper appreciation in the US. It wanted Americans to understand Middle Eastern culture. It wanted them to know Middle Eastern history and to learn about current events in the region.
Sometimes it appears like that the NGOs working around us, they are just consuming the funds and doing nothing. But they are doing a lot of things, changing minds and
yes, yes.
They are effective enough.
Yes, their activities, they have results, they have consequences. MEPC and NCUSAR worked to improve Americans' knowledge. They wanted Americans to better understand the Arab world. They wanted to spread information about the Middle East. Project on Middle East Democracy, POMED, and Arab American Institute, AAI, also worked inside the US. They advocated for Arab democracy within the US. POMED tried to influence American policy. It wanted the US to peacefully support real and long term democratic reforms in the Middle East. AAI, Arab American Institute, encouraged Arab Americans to take part in the US political system. It wanted Arab Americans to participate in elections and civic life. Saudi US Forum, SAF, and US Saudi Arabian Strategic Dialogue, SASRIS, were in the second category, which were working at the international level, including the Middle East.
So during your research, this data was available to you from which source?
Oh, it's a very, very, very important question. I spent years and years to collect this data by Google Alerts, by visiting the websites of these organizations and reading these newsletters and collecting the data into my Word files and going to the libraries, reading the national newspapers. And finally, I visited the UAE to collect data. There is a Gulf Research Institute like that. So I spent 2 weeks over there. They provided me an office, uh, furnished office, furniture, computer, internet, telephone, photocopy, even paper was free, tea and the coffee was free.
How it was?
Yes, at that time I was working with Park Institute for Peace Studies. Our director had relations with them, so he emailed them that one of our researchers is coming for research and he needs help. So upon his request, they accommodated me. So it was a great help.
Yes.
So I utilized their resources for 2 weeks, and I collected a lot of data. And I also visited other states. I was in Dubai, but I also visited Sharjah and Abu Dhabi, and I held interviews, uh, not openly but secretly, because discussing democracy at that time, it was not. Yes, yes. There is the Dubai School of Government. There was an American professor, Dr. Nicholas. I also interviewed him, and he was not willing to discuss my topic. He was afraid of some consequences. And there is an HBL bank in Abu Dhabi. I met its manager. He discussed nothing with me.
He refused.
He refused. Yes, he said, "There's no politics here. What are you talking? What are you talking about? There's no politics here." That's it. The interview was over. And then we had a chit chat and lunch and all that. So people are not were afraid of serious consequences. They would not discuss. Even my visa, it was a marketing visa. Yes,
Not research.
not research visa. Researchers are not welcome. They are not welcome. Okay. They worked. So you asked about data. I spent years and years and years collecting this data, and there was a heap of data. My file, so many files full of that, and then I analyzed it, spending weeks and months. And when I completed this thesis, still I had much more data. I could even write another thesis equal to this. I had so much data with me. So, but I enjoyed it a lot. I even still I study it. I enjoy it. You won't believe this whole weekend I was studying it.
Nice.
It is such a thing.
Must be very dear to you.
No doubt. Yes, the topics are very close to my heart. So they worked internationally. They provided information to both Americans and Saudis. Their goal was to improve understanding between the two peoples. Project on Middle East Democracy and Development, MEDD, Democracy Coalition Project, DCP, and other similar groups also worked internationally. DCP campaigned for a permanent UN Democracy Caucus. MEDD created understanding about political reform strategies. MEDD also worked on economic reform strategies. All these organizations used many strategies. They used many tools to achieve their objectives. DCP, POMED, and AAI had advocacy programs. They used these programs as part of their strategies. CESRIS, POMED, and DCP held roundtables, dialogues, and regular meetings. AMEU and NCUSAR ran educational programs. These programs helped inform people about Middle Eastern issues. AAI, DCP, and POMED did research. They conducted studies along with their other activities. Arab American Institute published a bi monthly magazine, The Link. SAF, Saudi American Forum, kept a website. It also sent emails to its subscribers. These emails were used to spread information. Center for Democracy and Human Rights in Saudi Arabia, CDHR, focused on democratic reforms in Saudi Arabia. It also campaigned for better human rights in the country. As part of its campaign, CDHR published articles. It also issued reports. It shared information to highlight human rights concerns. American think tanks played a strong role in producing research. They wrote reports, articles, and analysis on the Gulf region. They studied democratization and political developments in the Gulf. Research institutions produced large amounts of data. They provided information for policymakers, civil society, and activists. Academic journals published research related to these topics. Journals such as Journal of Democracy, Middle East Policy, and Arab Studies Quarterly published many articles. These articles discussed democracy promotion in the Gulf. They also discussed media issues and reform debates. Carnegie Endowment for International Peace also published influential works. Carothers wrote important essays on democracy promotion. In 2008, NED gave a grant of 63,000 US dollars to Search for Common Ground, SFCG. The grant was used to publish 40 articles. The articles were written by authors from Gulf countries. SFCG published these articles on its website and other platforms. Okay, I think we should stop. It's enough?
Yes.
Yes, we are halfway, but it's a long chapter. It will need another hour. So I think we stop it here. We can continue it next week
Sir,
if you would like. So I hope you enjoyed it.